When people say a game is fun, they can mean so many different things. In this video, I want to introduce you to a way of analyzing games that will help you understand better your goals as a developer. This video will have 3 parts. In part 1, I'll provide a definition of fun and talk about how a reliance on fun can limit us if we're not careful. In part 2, I'll use examples of well-known games to give you a better idea how this analysis works. And in part 3, I'll outline the pros and cons of relying on fun in game design, and I'll provide an optional activity that you can use to reflect on the game design of your favorite games. Part 1. Defining fun. First, what do I mean by fun? For the purpose of this discussion, I want to define fun in games as entertainment coming directly from game mechanics. Classic games like Tetris rely almost exclusively on fun, whereas games like Among Us let fun take a back seat and rely on other devices of entertainment, like social dynamics. From this angle, fun isn't necessarily a good or bad thing. Instead, it is a device, just one among many, that game developers use to make their games enjoyable. What about the other devices game developers use? Well, the reason that I dedicate an entire category of videos on my channel to purpose and inspiration is because I want to inspire you to all the different ways that you can entertain players. Intriguing stories, social dynamics, mind-bending experiences, comedy. The list goes on of ways that games can be entertaining and enjoyable. So the next question is, why do we place fun at the center of game development? Back when I was doing initial discovery for my capstone research, I came across an article. I think it gives a perfect example of how fun and game mechanics can take over in the game development process. A link to the article will be in the description. In the article, 2 groups of very young game developers were compared. Group 1 consisted of gamers, and Group 2 consisted of fans of other media. In this case, it was Korean drama shows. The gamer group made a standard puzzle game, which was easy to understand and play, and functioned as you would expect. This is the kind of game that most beginner game developers aim for. It centers fun as the device for creating entertainment. You solve puzzles with game mechanics, and you get a reward. The Korean drama fans had less experience playing games, which meant although they didn't have much reference for what to do, they also weren't closed-minded about what kind of experience they wanted to make. They weren't yet biased towards centering fun in their development. They chose to make an adventure game, but they focused a lot more on the story and conclusion of the game. The adventure was simply navigating a maze, and the conclusion was originally intended to be a sweet moment of caring for a loved one. Group Two's game is unconventional because it doesn't rely on game mechanics as the source of entertainment. Instead, it relies on your connection to the main character and your desire to see her reconnect with her loved one. As game developers, we face pressures of practicality to make our games fun. Fun is safe, reliable, and we can be sure that people will like what we make. But it can also mean sacrificing our artistic vision and the purpose of our game. Take a look at this discussion with Group 2 about how their game was going to end. Carla, how can we take care of him? The researcher, this is about, yes, the end of your game. What did you want her to do? Marta, we could tuck him into bed and... The researcher, we cannot do that. Remember, what we can do here in the game is in actions. Carla, yes, but that... Researcher, if she brings some stuff to him, like medicines. Marta, I don't know. We'll think about it. This conversation really stuck with me when I read the article. A sweet moment of care is replaced with a reward for getting collectibles, and it seems cheapened somehow. Of course, in the context of the research, it made perfect sense to try to finish the games quickly at the cost of some sacrifices. but it speaks to a larger issue for developers. It's very easy to lose the original intent of your game in fun. If there's one motto to be taken from this video, it's this: don't sacrifice the meaningfulness of your game in the name of fun. Part 2. Examples. To ensure that I'm not just giving you another challenge on top of everything else in game development, let's look at some examples of games and how they use other devices without relying totally on fun. I'll place games that rely mostly on fun on the right, and games that rely less on fun on the left. I want to reiterate that I'm not saying anything about whether these games are good or bad, just whether or not they use the tool of fun in their game design. There are classic games like Tetris, Disney Blitz, and Doodle Jump. They almost exclusively rely on fun. Even games like these tend to have high scores, so not all the entertainment comes from fun, but it also comes from setting and accomplishing goals. There are roguelike games like Hades, The Binding of Isaac, and Rogue Legacy. They rely mostly on fun through their unique combat systems, but they also use storytelling as a reward for players. These rewards act as an alternate device of entertainment. And there are games like Fall Guys and Fortnite. They also rely heavily on fun, but provide extra entertainment through character customization and social expression through emotes. There are games on the other side of the spectrum too that rely much less on fun, but they're still very successful. The Stanley Parable uses dialogue, mind-bending situations, and comedy to create entertainment for the player. The game mechanics themselves include moving around and interacting with objects, so I wouldn't describe this game as a fun game. Among Us relies primarily on social dynamics to produce entertainment, and although there are many games that center on fun, they don't stand alone as the main devices used by the developer. I'd like to point out that the games I mentioned, Stanley Parable and Among Us, they're still creatable by a beginner. They're not any more difficult, in fact, in some cases easier, to create than the games that rely on fun. Getting back to the examples, there are games that cater to different types of players in different ways. In fact, most games are like this. For the examples to follow, I will place the games on my own personal spectrum that's subjective to me, on how much fun influenced my enjoyment of these games. Pokemon has complex and interesting game mechanics, so much so that there are communities online dedicated to battling. But for me, I just want to gather my favorite cuties and go everywhere together. My entertainment comes from finding cool Pokemon designs and creating my team, not the act of battling. Smash Bros. Has a very complex fan base, but most people that play are engaging socially, battling it out in an unpredictable environment. I enjoyed the game as a competitor, so it's mostly a fun game for me. Valheim has captivating game mechanics for any player, with rich mechanics. For me, Valheim is a game I play with friends, so social dynamics play an equal role in my enjoyment of the game. That puts Valheim right in the middle of my spectrum. Little Big Planet literally separates their game into two sections. One that focuses on fun and game mechanics, and another that focuses on creativity and socialization for entertainment. I spent most of my time on the creation and socialization while playing Little Big Planet, so it lands on the left side of my spectrum. Here are some of the important discoveries we made by looking at examples. Even the games most reliant on fun still use other devices like high scores or story to engage players. Games exist that don't rely on fun much at all, but are still just as entertaining and enjoyable. A lot of those games won't necessarily be more difficult to create in practice. Fun is just one device among many that game developers use to create engaging experiences. The fun spectrum is a useful tool when analyzing games, both the games we play and the games that we are making. I hope that these examples helped explain to you what I mean by fun in more detail. In the next part, I'll outline an activity that you can do to create your own fun spectrum and reflect on what it means for your game development. I'll also talk about the pros and cons of using fun as a device in development. Part 3. The fun activity and pros and cons. Now that you've seen me place games on my own personal fun spectrum, I suggest that you try to make your own. I believe the act of doing this can not only help you understand why you like the games you like, but it also could help highlight for you your purpose as a developer of your own games. Here's the activity I have in mind. First, make a list of games that you remember liking the most. Then, place your games on the spectrum by thinking about what you enjoyed about the game. I recommend making an actual timeline either in paper or in a program. And remember, the placement of these games is for you personally. As you're placing your games on the spectrum, ask yourself these questions. Was your way of enjoying the game the only way that people tend to enjoy it? Do you think the developer planned for their game to be enjoyed in the ways that it was? Here are some questions you can use to reflect on your development after placing your games on the spectrum. What devices, aside from fun, do I want to use in my game design? When, where, and to what extent do I want to rely on fun in my game design? Are the devices I'm going to use to create entertaining games in line with my talents and skills? Are there other devices like storytelling that I would excel at more than what I'm currently doing? To round out the video, let's look at the pros and cons of using fun as a device in game development. Some pros of using fun include avoiding overwhelm when starting a project, and it's easier to explain your game and what it is because fun is familiar. Also, a pretty wide audience is guaranteed, even though you potentially exclude people who aren't good at games. Some of the cons of relying on fun include limiting the experiences you can make to ones that center around game mechanics. Also, if you focus only on the fun, you might miss out on other ways to entertain the player by relegating elements like the story and dialogue to be afterthoughts. Your talents in non-gameplay areas may also not be fairly represented in your game. Thank you for watching. I hope that this video helped you. Don't forget to subscribe for more content, and you can click above to learn more about the content that I offer on Pierogigon Games. Good luck on your development.